Did you get it, Cindy?
Yes, I got it.
Okay, great. Excellent.
We are now live.
Good morning, everyone. My video is about to come on. My name is Maggie Ullman, and I am the chair of our Environment and Safety Committee. Welcome to our 25th meeting. We are a remote meeting. All of council and our committee members and staff were all virtual. To help our audience follow along, I'm going to read the agenda as we go so everyone knows where our sections are. We are live streaming on our virtual engagement hub, which is accessible through the link at the front of our city website. And we also have an option for the public to listen live by phone and then call in. That phone number is 855-95-2801, and the meeting code is 9477. Those of you out there in the virtual world, welcome. For today's in addition to being able to listen live by phone, you can call in and comment live during the meeting. And it's that same phone number, 855-925-2801, meeting code 9477. When you dial in, your phone will be muted. You'll hear the meeting live. And at this point, speakers need to push *3 to enter the speaker queue. So I'm next going to go through our roll call before we dive into our agenda. If you don't mind coming off mute and saying a quick hello, that would be great. First, our Vice Mayor, Sandra Kilgore.
Good morning, everyone.
And our third councilman of this committee, Councilwoman Smith, she is absent today. But we do have our city manager, Deborah Campbell.
Good morning.
We also have our deputy city attorney, John Maddox.
Good morning.
Morning, John. We have our sustainability director, Bridget Herring.
Good morning.
And joining her is our sustainability manager, Kira Boolens. Sorry.
Good morning.
We also have our Parks and Recs director, D. Tyrell McGirt.
Good morning.
Our chief of police, Mike Lamb.
Good morning.
And our deputy chief of police, Jackie Stepp.
Good morning.
And we also have a special guest, a personal friend, Reggie Tidwell from Curve Theory, who will be presenting one of our sessions later.
Good morning.
Welcome. All right. Thanks, everybody. I don't think I missed anybody.
Chief Case.
Oh, goodness.
We have a number of
That's right.
Good morning, everyone. Good to see you.
Good morning. Apologies. Yeah, we'll be getting a nice update. No. All right. So we will start our agenda with the first item, which is our first of two public comments. Do we have any public comments starting us off?
Yes, Madam Chair, we do. One moment,
Great.
please. Caller ending in 0852. Your line is now open. You will have 3 minutes to speak.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yep.
Yes.
Oh, great. Thank you. My name is Jensen Gelfond, and I live in West Asheville, and I'm calling for a couple reasons. First, in response to last meeting around the proposal by Asheville Police Department to increase panhandling penalties by expanding the high traffic solicitation zones to Patton Avenue, Haywood Road, and South Tunnel Road. I think that the impact of increasing the criminalization of people most in need, namely a $500 fine and putting them in the criminal justice system through a misdemeanor, is not the right fit for how we should be addressing situations of extreme need and homelessness. It seems like the ability for someone to verbally ask somebody else for resources when they are in need should be a human right in Asheville. And we should actually be considering doing away with high traffic solicitation zones entirely instead of considering expanding them. What is the impact on somebody who doesn't have anything when they're charged $500 and a solicitation, and does doing that to more people help anybody in Asheville, or does it just band-aid over a problem that is actually giving us good information about how we need to help people and the number of people in need. Every person at a street corner is giving us important information and giving us a very clear opportunity to support these people. And I would like to see our civilian government do more to directly support those in need instead of criminalizing them. So thank you for considering that. I also wanted to address a topic that is on today's agenda around civilian crash investigators. I think this is a great idea. I'm so glad that North Carolina is embracing this. And why do we need somebody with a gun at all traffic stops, and how is that beneficial? I think it's really a good idea to offer alternative options. We know that Black and brown people are more likely to be harmed at a traffic stop by the person with a gun, namely the police officer. And if we reduce the number of investigators who have lethal force, then I think we're also going to reduce the harm to Black and brown people and people in general. So I just wanted to congratulate the police department for the work you've been doing so far on getting this program up and running. I'm really looking forward to that presentation. And thank you for looking into this common sense move. Thank you all, and have a great day.
Do you have any other open public comment at the start of the call?
We do not.
Okay, great. So we'll move on to our second agenda item, which is approval of the June 25th, 2024 minutes. Have a motion?
I'd like to make a motion.
I will second. I will also do a roll call vote, as is practice on our video calls. Vice Mayor Kilgore?
Aye.
Myself, aye. The motion passes. The minutes are approved. Next, we will move on to item number 3 on our agenda, which is Elevate AVL, a Climate Justice Initiative project update. Looking forward to this.
Good morning, council members, and thank you for having us today. My name is Kira Boulan. I'm the Sustainability Manager here with the City of Asheville, and I am extremely pleased to be joined by our consultant, Reggie Tidwell. He's going to tag team this presentation as we've been working on this project together. We're excited to share some updates with you all about recent activities within the Climate Justice Initiative. Next slide, please. I'm going to start out by reiterating that the current Elevate AVL campaign and the emerging programs we'll talk about today are built on the foundation of the city's climate justice work to date. This is a neighborhood center's approach to resilience, as we presented to this group on earlier this year. Our Climate Action Toolkit is a project that looks to improve and expand not only the resources that will be co-created and have been co-created with our community members, but also to build and foster community ownership of the ideas, the actions, and the future initiatives as they're defined. And finally, building on that idea that our next steps for community-facing climate justice work, they're going to continue to evolve and be informed by recommendations of participants and community leadership as the projects and programs evolve. Next slide, please. Okay, here's how we got to where we're at with the Climate Justice Initiative. A couple things to point out here: that our 2018 Climate Resilience Assessment and the 2019 guide that was published in collaboration with NEMAC, which is the National Environmental Modeling and Analysis Center at UNC Asheville, they all predated our 2020 Climate Emergency Declaration that came from City Council, as well as the Climate Justice Initiative work that we have been doing over the past few years. That work in 2020 into 2022, primarily our phase 1 work, has really informed our current approach with climate justice, within the understanding that the reality of our rapidly unfolding climate crisis impacts our most vulnerable communities first and worst, and that this understanding positions that leadership and that lived experience and wisdom. It needs to be at the forefront of any solutions or actions that we put forward, both in terms of our community-led, neighborhood, household-level solutions and actions, and also as we move forward to build true community resilience in terms of our city collaboration with that work. Finally, excuse me, I also want to note that while the idea to revisit this practical, actionable solutions and strategies bubbled up during this initial community listening, sessions from 2020 to 2022. It's only now, after a period of time, putting our climate justice data map to work, testing out and piloting our climate justice screening tool and technical assistance internally with our city projects and program managers, that we're pivoting back to this work. So there was a period of time where we really were focused internally, thinking about applying lessons and best practices internally and ways that we can inform our own project management, our own rollout and implementation with these best practices and ideas that are coming from our community leadership. All that is to say that it can be and has been challenging to hold this thread of continuity and accountability with our capacity. And we are so appreciative right now of the trust and patience of the folks who are currently participating in the Elevate AVL program and people that continue to come on board and want to partner with us at the city and with their neighbors in co-creating these actionable solutions that we can build a more resilient community with together. Next slide, please. Here, I just want to briefly highlight some of the key recommendations that did come from that first phase 1 engagement. We've kept this at the forefront as we worked internally, and we pivot back to our external engagement. The recommendations that you're seeing in bold are those that directly informed and or are present here in the Elevate AVL work that we're talking about today. Next slide, please. Finally, one last piece of background information before I get to the current good stuff. This is a homegrown visualization. These definitions are shaped with our local community leaders during phase 1. With climate justice as our foundation, as we're talking about the first and worst, our most impacted communities, we really look towards climate equity. We seek to share information and resources with that thoughtful intention. We're trying to invest in community self-direction and long-term resilience. Finally, our gold star in the middle there, climate resilience, it's anchored in our neighborhoods, but we know that there's really no one-size-fits-all solution, and a coordinated approach across the city where our people are well-resourced, engaged, informed, they're activating community leadership, and ensuring that this resilience work also applies internally across the organization and is rooted in that community leadership. So we're looking for an understanding that doing this work with our community leadership, with that knowledge at the forefront, will help us to be able to provide community-wide resilience and be able to co-create those solutions in our community. Next slide. Finally, here we go, our current work. So this is our Elevate AVL. You can start to see some of Reggie's beautiful handy work there on the side. He's going to speak more to the logo and sort of branding as we pivot to him soon. We're going to talk to you more about what this Elevate AVL is all about. So we brought Reggie on board last fall and together cultivated some community leadership to vision the name, look, feel of what we hope will really be what we're describing as a watershed movement. And one of our advisory council members, Joel Osgood, who sits on the Sustainability Advisory Committee and was integral in helping us think through some of the strategy early on. He really likes to think about this watershed approach. And I love the way that sort of marries our sustainability themes with this idea that it's going to take us all. It will take us all. And so we worked on this sort of branding and re-engaging with our community members to inform this practical action toolkit and resource development as our initial project under the umbrella of Elevate AVL. Our engagement agents and advisory committee members who are compensated community leaders, they've been hitting the pavement, digging into some resilience database spreadsheets, and I think most importantly, really building a culture of trust, accountability, and cohesion as we set the stage for the next phase of community work. The ideas and insights about how climate realities are being experienced in Asheville, like specifically here, there's a lot of resources nationally, regionally. We're really focused, this movement is really focused on what is happening here. How is this showing up here? How's it impacting our community? And so we really wanted to be able to hear that from our neighbors, to be able to level that up into a guide, and for people to see themselves, their neighbors, and their actionable solutions be present in this toolkit as we reboot the original personal action guide and launch a climate action toolkit. Reggie's going to share a little bit more insight later on exactly how that's shaping up. And finally, just circling back to our intentions on listening and learning and community leadership, we're trying to put that into practice by tapping deeply into our engagement agents, their wisdom, their community conversations, and informing the next steps for our programming as we bring the toolkit contents to life in our neighborhoods and we chart out the ongoing work for Elevate AVL. Next slide, please. Here's a little snapshot of what's new at the Elevate AVL table and who's who's coming to that table so far. As I mentioned previously, we have our 5 compensated engagement agents. Their names are Cassie, Dulce, Lydia, Renee, and Veronica. They really took the reins in this first phase and connecting to their own communities where they're living, where they work, where they play. They're pursuing their own strategies, which included some one-on-one conversations, focus groups, neighborhood meetings, climate cafes, youth workshops, and more. They're amazing, y'all. We're really pleased to be able to work with them, and they're bringing so much wisdom and connection to this conversation. We're also fortunate to work with 3 community advisory committee members. They're from our local and national community. They supported the climate action and project strategy development. And then finally, we reconnected with a strong and important thread to our phase 1 work by collaborating with Marisol Jimenez, who facilitated a 2-part workshop series for the full team, engagement agents, advisory committee members, and sustainability staff, and of course, Reggie, building on that relationship trust and working to identify themes and opportunities to grow and chart our path forward and elevate ABL together. Next slide. So what do we hear? We heard in these 8 months of conversations, collaboration, is that we need to deepen our language justice commitments, that we don't just want to share out information, but we want to put resources towards innovative, equitable information and skill sharing platforms and opportunities. So not just us saying, reinterpreting the really good information that came out of the 2018 climate resilience assessment, but figuring out ways to interpret that, turn that into actionable bite-sized pieces, meeting people where they're at, and thinking about creative ways to be able to bring this message into our community and also use those opportunities to continue to learn about how this is showing up and where those solutions and ideas are already bubbling up in our community. And finally, we want to continue to expand the commitment to our neighborhood-led climate action planning while coordinating the city efforts for maximum impact and leveraging the resources that we have at hand. There's some cool work going on throughout the city in different departments that touch this work, and there are so many opportunities for us to continue to weave that fabric. Some key learnings and considerations as we're digging further into Elevate initiatives, and this is one little nugget that came from one of our workshops, is we want to go slow to go fast. And we have to keep reminding ourselves of this in this time of urgency and climate crisis and our desire to act and our pressure to act from internal and external sources. We know that we want to take bold action, and also we know that we need to lay this foundation and continue to do that hard work of trust building in order to really create that watershed that we're hoping to continue to lift up here. We may have some ideas in mind from our past engagement, and this was the case with the Personal Action Toolkit Reboot project that's turning into the Climate Action Toolkit. But if we don't take the time to make the current work grounded in what we already heard, to respect and articulate how we got here and how we want to move forward together, then we waste time, trust, and wisdom. And that's not something that we want to do here in this place. And so finally, our efforts need to include and prioritize planning for incorporating reciprocity and action in naming and addressing our shared concerns and maintaining that momentum as we continue to go forward and hear from and act in step with our community. Next slide, please. At long last, I'm going to turn it over to our creative genius, Reggie, and he's going to talk with you about some of the work he's been doing on the Climate Action Toolkit and other assets in development. Take it away, Reggie.
You're too kind, Kira. So nice to see so many familiar faces on the call. Hello, everyone. To kind of piggyback on what Kira was saying, and also to reflect what Joel Osgood said, you know, this initiative takes all of us. And so all the creative assets, logo, branding, even the name were all crafted to unify our communities so that we can all, you know, take a sense of ownership in what we can do to have a positive impact on our climate. And so you'll notice that the hope was that we arrived at something that felt a little less corporate, something a little more grassroots that communities could get behind. We have t-shirts, we have some hats sort of in the making. We've got poster campaigns. Next slide, please. This is the cover of the guide, by the way, in the interior. Poster campaigns, social media assets. The hope is that we are producing assets to create some thought. You know, we want communities to start talking about climate, having conversations with their loved ones, with their neighbors, with the friends and family, ideally to start generating some engagement around the subject of climate change. And the more we do that, and the more we have these assets, the idea is to bring them back to a website that is an additional asset that we're creating that will, with the website being dynamic, will obviously have information that can continue to evolve as we learn more about what our community members need. So the guide itself, the climate resource guide, is something that can act as a resource that people can have on hand in their house. It'll have some really great suggestions for things that, low-hanging fruit things that people can do to help have a positive impact on the climate from their own personal journey, but also have lots of, tiebacks to the website. Our hope is that the website becomes this sort of, I wouldn't say a phase 2 because it is part of phase 1, but ultimately it's going to continue to grow and include many more assets as we go along. I think, do we have another slide here? I think that's it. Yeah, so I can say, just want to like go back through some highlights. Working with the engagement agents was actually really key. Obviously, to build a resource that we want the community to get behind, you've got to have the community be a part of that conversation. We didn't want to develop something in a silo and then give it out to the community, because we already know from experience that that doesn't work. We want to make sure that this is something people can actually take a sense of ownership of. And to do that, it was really key to have people from our community, namely our engagement agents, interacting with the community at large, learning what kinds of information needed to be in this guide, what kinds of misconceptions, what kinds of personal stories that we can champion. And to that note, we actually are reaching out to individual community members and doing these sort of personal stories that will be part of the guide, and also will provide further content for the website. So we'll have video content, which I think is also another important thing for community members to see people from their own community reflecting about their personal journey with the climate. So all in all, this has been a really fun process. Like Kira said, it's not always easy. Obviously, having to reestablish trust, working with the government, of course, I know community members can find that not necessarily always easy. And so we did discover some pain points, which we were able to actually, sort of step aside and allow our community members to speak. We are seeing just, wonderful evidence of that trust being rebuilt. Our engagement agents were, I think, the front line of defense there, and being able to hear through their own personal successes how the community was softening and providing information and people wanting to be more involved definitely shows that we are, this is so far a very successful process. So I'll leave it at that, hand it back over to Kira, I think, for the next slide. But thank you so much for having me today, everyone.
Thanks, Reggie. I'll just back up to next steps real quick and then close this out. We're looking forward to hosting focus groups and finalizing the toolkit before distributing via print and digital channels. We're starting some of that soft launch rollout over the course of the end of summer and looking into the fall there. Excited to be able to launch the actual print guide later in this calendar year. And we're considering other program recommendations in alignment with really exciting and inspiring internal efforts that are just launching, like our Community Risk Reduction Division, Emergency Preparedness Month communications that are coming out in collaboration with other departments here in the city, and really trying to weave all those different pieces together to be able to kind of hold the umbrella of Elevate AVL and resilience building across our community. Our priorities emerging from input to date include innovative information and action sharing, community participatory research, both places where we can activate that reciprocity and lay foundations to explore resilience hub conversations, community-led work to support neighborhood leadership and connectivity, and of course, there's youth engagement, which may look like pop ed campaigns or other innovative youth-led programming. Really feeling like the sky is the limit on that one, and looking forward to hearing what bubbles up. And then we finally want to continue to deepen our engagement here and support ideas and initiatives as they emerge, which means we'll be continuing to identify additional funding to pursue priority projects as we're able to identify them. And our last slide, let's take a quick moment to reflect on our key takeaways before taking any questions, if there are any. This work stands on the shoulders of our Phase 1 Climate Justice Initiative ideas, engagement, and foundation, the Climate Action Toolkit, and the accompanying good stuff Reggie was talking about, social media and otherwise, that develop and share actionable community-centered resources. And then our next steps for this work will continue to be informed by recommendations from our current and future Elevate AVL participants and the community leadership as it evolves. Thank you so much for having us today.
Thank you so much for the presentation. I have a couple thoughts and questions. I don't know if Sandra, you want to chime in with anything there?
Only thing I'd like to say, I really appreciate you taking the time to come and do your presentation today. And the one thing that I found that I was really really liked about the whole project was the slogan where you said, "Go slow to go fast." And the reason why is because I think a lot of these, when you talk about a climate initiative, sustainability, and all these things, people basically do not connect with all that stuff. You know what I mean? It's like it just, and see it, and unless you're in that area, it just sort of goes over your head. So I really appreciate that approach. And I appreciate the approach basically the little focus areas where you basically started with people engaging with the neighbors and each other. Because what is happening in the communities all over, people do not engage with each other. People do not. So basically, by starting with that foundation where you said, reach out to your neighbor, this is the people that you may rely on and they may be relying on you. When you start encouraging those type of relationships, basically you're setting a foundation where you can sort of build on that with the whole, approach. So I greatly appreciate the way you came up with that and the way so I'm just grateful, and I really appreciate it. And I think that a lot of projects that we really do, that we've got to start thinking about whether or not the people can actually connect with us before we give them all this information, because all we're doing is sort of confusing them and sort of actually isolating them from the process because they just check out. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much for that. I couldn't have said it better myself. That social fabric is really what we're aiming to strengthen and to lean into here. And we know that our neighbors are the ones that are most important as we think about how we move forward together. So I appreciate that.
Yeah, agreed. Very well said, Sandra. I admittedly, in my day job, I work on climate, and so I can get very far up the jargon ladder, just any of us can in our job, our industries. And I think preparing for the climate is so important that we have to get out of those worlds so that people can understand. What I also really love about the toolkit and the materials is that there is so much about being prepared for things that is block by block, checking on your neighbor. We're saying it's, I'm talking to some folks right now in Hall Creek who have some concerns around fire, right? And they're right up next to the Blue Ridge Parkway, who has a fire suppression plan. And so looking at those things of, when you're talking about fire, it's like, trimming your trees a lot and making sure there isn't extra fuel around. It's things that, I guess what I'm trying to get to is there's actually a lot of individual personal steps we can take to prepare ourselves even better. And part of what is so overwhelming about climate change is how big it is and how scary it is. And so we've been told from scientists with fancy numbers and lab coats for years and years, like this could end the whole world and it's a global scale. And like, I don't know what bigger message could make me immobile, And so this is really breaking it down. Like, here's what some flood prevention looks like. Here's what this looks like. I think that's really, really powerful. And then I'll also say from the government, I think, as you mentioned in the beginning, Kira, a lot of our sustainability programming, for very good reason, has focused on what local government can do because we have a huge role as well. And there's only so far, like everybody has a role, and this makes it clear, accessible, and I doubt it's hard to even use, but like I feel like optimistic almost when I see this stuff, because it's like, oh, whoa, okay, all right, I'm not isn't out of control, I can take part in making sure my mother-in-law and my next door neighbor, like we're all going to be all right. So that's a remarkable tone to strike in a notoriously apocalyptic topic area of climate change. And so that just really speaks to the talent and skill and the listening of the community members who had so much to generate and your ability to shape their story with them. So thanks.
Yeah, Maggie, I would sort of piggyback on what you were saying. I mean, the reality is, like you said, we don't have these conversations with each other. And I think the whole idea and objective around this project is to really sort of make the conversation of climate approachable. Like Sandra said, it really is one of those things that, you know, it's sort of over most people's head. They don't know how to approach it. They become sort of, you know, detached from it. And the more we can allow people to have approachable language that they can start developing conversations around. For instance, I have my personal story is that I've had, and you know this, Maggie, we've had floods in our basement. And once you start talking about things like that with your friends, with your neighbors, you start realizing other people are having a lot of the same kinds of problems. And then you can start sharing how you resolve yours. Those personal stories, those personal successes go a long way with helping us as a community lift up, because the more knowledge you have about how other neighbors have managed something exactly like what you're dealing with, it just empowers us to feel like we're actually working together as a community to take on a much larger problem. And I think that's just the very basis of this work.
Thank you for having us. We look forward to coming back with future updates.
Thanks again. So excited to see this progress and to really see us step out into community with community to direct some of our programming. I'm very, very excited about us doing that hand in hand with neighbors. And
Thanks,
y'all
everyone.
to see it out in the community. All right. Where is my agenda? Found it. So we're going to move on now to our fourth agenda item, which is the Asheville Parks and Recreation 10-year update. We've been lucky to have D. Tyrell come and present to us several times as this really impressive planning effort has been built and culminating. And so we have another update today.
All right. Good morning, Chair Ullman, Vice Mayor Kilgore. I'm D. Tyrell McGirt. I have the pleasure of serving as the Parks and Recreation Director here with the City of Asheville. I do want to acknowledge that while everyone within Asheville Parks and Rec has had the opportunity to provide feedback on this plan, I want to acknowledge the work of Pete Wall, the Assistant Parks and Recreation Director, as well as Al Koff, the project lead for our team, working with Design Workshop over the last year to pull all of this together. Today we have with us Brenna Laffey. Brenna has served as the project lead with Design Workshop, the consulting firm we've worked with the past year to help bring together Recreate Asheville. Give Brenna an opportunity just to say hello real quick and any opening comments she may have. Brenna.
Hi, everyone. It's good to see everyone again today, and I'm really excited for the culmination of this planning effort and hearing everybody's thoughts throughout this process. Thank you for having me.
We were just with you last month, so we'll give an abbreviated version of the same presentation we gave last month and touch on some of those highlights that are coming out of the Recreate Asheville plan. Next slide. Key takeaways: the plan outlines 5 key focus areas and strategic investments to achieve the goals outlined in the 10-year vision. The investment zones are identified based on geographic areas most in need, based on factors such as equity, current conditions, size, people served, and park experiences. The plan includes short, mid, and long-term goals encompassing various programs and projects, programming, prioritizing recreation activities and events, maintenance, addressing existing park infrastructure needs, upgrades, renovating current parks, redevelopment, transforming existing community and recreation centers, new parks, building new neighborhood parks, and special amenities, developing major unique park features. Again, we were before you all last month at the June 25th Environment and Safety Committee meeting. We are asking that this committee support the plan and move it forward to the full council, and hopes that the council will review and adopt the plan at the August 27th council meeting. Next slide. So Asheville, we are updating our comprehensive Parks and Recreation Plan, which is entitled Recreate Asheville, Shaping Our City Parks. Recreate Asheville will serve as a roadmap for the next 10+ years to connect, fix, build, and preserve recreation programs and parklands throughout the city. I mentioned last time we were together that this plan, although it's a visionary plan, we did focus on those things that are practical. We want to focus on building and fixing those things that currently exist within a system. How can we make those areas and make improvements with those areas while also keeping up with the trends and what the community say they want to see in their Asheville Parks and Rec system. Next slide. So the plan themes. This plan has 5 focus areas that are identified here. Stewards and maintain parks for all, focuses on the care, operation, and investments in our park systems, making sure that these investments are equitable and that people have quality experiences within our park system. Access and connectivity focuses on how easy it is for people to get from their homes to our park spaces. And once they get to those park spaces, that they feel welcome and safe there, and that there are no barriers for people participating in our programs. Community health and wellness focuses on our centers being seen as essential health and wellness centers where people can go and a community can get equitable, healthy outcomes. Gathering and placemaking focuses on gathering spaces and creating areas where we can highlight and celebrate the culture of neighborhoods and communities, the arts that exist here in Asheville, as well as just the overall natural beauty of Asheville and the Blue Ridge Mountain region. And resilient natural environments focuses on ensuring that our built environments, our built centers and parks integrate well with our natural systems that exist here in Asheville. Each of these, I'm sorry, just going back real quick, each of these 5 focus areas have goals, action plans, a lead staff designated to ensuring that the action items are accomplished, and a time frame for accomplishing those goals over the next 10 years. So a strategic action plan ensuring that each of the actions that are coming out of these 5 focus areas are accomplished. Goals is one of the products, tangible products that we're getting out of the Recreate Asheville plan. Brenna, did you have anything to add to the plan themes here?
No, I think that's great. Yeah, these were a culmination of a robust community engagement process, and shared these with the community and received feedback at a few different touch points. Yeah.
Sounds good. Next slide. So our system includes 9 community centers, over 55 parks, and a lot of deferred maintenance. So it's important that we prioritize projects based on community feedback and based on some of the needs that currently exist. I was shared with you all the last time that equity is a guiding principle throughout the entire plan. It is woven through each of those 5 focus areas that I just talked about. And it's what we start with. We ask the question, does it serve vulnerable residents? And we have an equity investment map here that identifies where the areas that are most crucial or critical for us to invest in are identified. Those areas are given obviously top priority in terms of investments. We also ask ourselves several other questions, like, can it help climate justice goals? What condition are the parks in? We know that with the last bond, we were able to make a number of upgrades to different park spaces. Obviously, those spaces will fall to the bottom of the list in order to get some of the older parks with older infrastructure improved and updated. Size of the park, residents are saying they like to see larger size parks or have spaces that have more amenities in them. Does it have a range of amenity types? How many residents does it serve? What types of facilities or park is it? And does it have support? All of this comes together to help influence and determine what the priority projects are going to be within the system, those things that we're going to get to first. Each of them are given, we have a matrix, they're scored, and they're prioritized based on how they fall within that matrix. Brenna, anything additional to add here?
I think you covered it, but as you'll see in the plan, all of these factors go into how the projects are phased and the recommendations that are a part of the plan. This covered that well.
Next slide. So the vision plan projects, this is the culmination based on feedback from community members, based on conditions of parks, equity and investment zones. This is where we lie. We understand that 36 major existing park upgrades, redevelopment projects over the next 10 plus years. 8 major center redevelopment projects have been identified, and pretty much that's all of our current recreation and community centers. 8 new neighborhood parks. There are some gaps within our system, within the city of Asheville, where individuals are saying that they would like to have park spaces closer to where they live. So establishing 8 new neighborhood parks over the next 10 plus years, and then 9 new major or special use facilities. And those special use facilities are identified like pools, racket courts, splash pads, disc golf courts, dog parks, etc. Those are some of the items that will fall under major special use facilities, along with deferred maintenance over the next few years. The plan does break it down into 4 phases. So phases 1 identifies the short-term goals that we have identified of accomplishing within the first 1 to 4 years. Phase 2, midterm goals, 5 to 8 years. Phase 3, long-term goals, 9 plus years. And then phase 4 are 20 plus years to get to some of those park projects. Next slide. So this is where we would initially start. Once council approves the plan, we'll get right to work on 6 major existing park upgrades and redevelopment projects. Those that have been identified are Burton Street Park, Roger Farmer, Murray Hill, Malvern Hills Park, Walton Street Park, as well as the new Sweden Creek Park. 2 new center redevelopment projects, Crump Shallow Recreation Center, as well as Tempe Avery Montfort Rec Centers have been identified as the 2 centers to be looked at first. 1 new neighborhood park I just mentioned, Sweden Creek Park. This is a park property we purchased with the last get some review and design done there to really establish what that park system may look like. And then 2 major special use facilities, pickleball complex and aquatic facility. Most likely the pool at Malvern Hills Park have been identified in the plan as phase 1 top priorities to be identified first, along with several deferred maintenance throughout the system. Next slide. Programming priorities. It's important for us to formalize our programming philosophy. So we'll be taking a look at that on the rec side of the house to understand where does it make sense for us to focus our programming energies, prioritizing programming focus for APR, Asheville Parks and Rec. track and update programming with consistent matrix. We're fortunate we have software that we use within the system. So really taking the data that we get from that software, understanding where the most programs that are getting the most attention, the most traction, those are the things that we want to focus on doing more of. Obviously, there's a need for it. And then those things that don't get the traction that we're looking for, maybe phasing those out and focusing in on another programming area. Monitoring and evaluating new programs and partnerships. We recognize we can't do it alone. We're trying to reach a number of people. So forming partnerships with already existing neighborhood groups or community groups is important for us to explore as we're talking about providing additional programming within the system. At the bottom here just identifies the types of programs citizens have identified as important to them. Expanding adult active therapeutic programs, expanding aquatic programs through facilities and partnerships, expanding youth camps, outdoor environmental nature camps, those types of programs, collaborating more with existing organizations that are providing those services in an effort to get citizens connected to these experiences, as well as exploring partnerships and sponsorships to expand cultural enrichment programs and special events. Next slide. So we're in phase 3. Again, we're trying to wrap this plan up. We were before you all last month. We're back here today to get approval of the plan, and then final stage would be to present this to council at the August 27th meeting with the recommendation for adoption. Next slide. The major highlights of the plan are those 5 key focus areas that I talked about earlier. Those really established a strategic action plan for the plan. Investment zones are identified based on the geographic areas that are most need. So equity, the current condition, size, people served, and park experiences are things that we're looking at there. The plan does have short term. That's where we will focus our initial energies and efforts on getting those year 1 to 4 priorities identified, scoped, and delivered on first. But we also have mid and long-term goals. So this would be something that we're working on for the next 10 plus years. Again, we're back before you presenting an abbreviated version of the plan from last month. And the goal here is get support from this committee and move it forward to the council meeting for August 27th. Any questions?
This is fantastic work. Again, we got to see it last month, so I feel like, you know, what do they say? You should hear something 9 times to really lock it in. Like every time I hear it, there's another part where I'm like, wow, this is going to be really neat. I did have one question. In the plan, and I can't even recall the slide, but you basically have identified some of the first phase of investments and whether there's parks or it's like community centers. So 2 community centers that you mentioned were Shiloh and the Tempe Avery. Could you just talk more about what you anticipate? Because I know you didn't say like rebuild. It's not like we're tearing these down and starting over, but I wasn't sure, like, do you have a sense, is this like they need a roof or like they might do an expansion? I bet it's different for each, but curious if you have any insight into where that, like just where those projects may go.
Yeah, the details behind what will be included in each of those hasn't been established yet, but we do know we want to bring those buildings up to par. We want to add more recreation amenities, upgrade the spaces that are currently in it. It would be a lot of the things that are not really attractive, like you mentioned, the roof, HVAC systems in those spaces, those things that are behind the scenes, as well as making them more functional for how community and rec centers operate today. Brennan, did you have anything else to add?
Yeah, I would just add that, some of the criteria around those facilities in particular are based on a facilities assessment that already went through. So there's kind of those list of items around ADA accessibility. And as Dee mentioned, a lot of it is improvements to things like HVAC, things that really make them function, but it's also to improve them for your programming needs.
Great. For us and the community just to expect, because we do know, and we talk about on almost all our communities, we have a lot of deferred maintenance. And so we're going to be investing in communities, and some parts might not look that different, but it means that they're going to be way more, they'll be able to sustain themselves a lot longer instead of tearing down and building new, which is just a huge use of tax dollars. So that's exciting. And I hope that several of these projects, when they do get a roof replaced, we'll get some solar so they can be really resilient places, so that when the power goes out in neighborhoods, people have a safe place to go with the lights on and stuff like that. So I know there's a lot more work to go from a master plan to hammer swing, but excited to see the direction of some of these really vital community centers. I don't have any further questions. I'm not sure if you want to chime in with anything, or we could go to a motion, because I'm very supportive and excited for this to move forward towards adoption.
So I'll make a motion to move to approve Directory Asheville, shaping our city's parks, and a system-wide 10-year plan for Asheville parks and recreation, and forwarding to full council for final review, adoption at the August 27, 2023.
I second. So as is our process, I'll do a roll call vote. Vice Mayor Kilgore.
Aye.
Myself, aye. And the motion passes. Congratulations. This is one committee stop, but I know there's great enthusiasm across the organization and with the other councilmen. I just can't wait to see what we continue to build together. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. We will go on to our fifth agenda item, which as we quarterly crime updates. And so we'll have a quarterly crime update, as well as some information about the civilian crash investigators, which has been a big opportunity for us. And I believe our chief of police will start us off, possibly with support from Deputy Chief Stepp.
Yeah, good morning. Thank you very much. It looks like we still have 8 minutes left in the morning. So yeah, still good morning. Hope everyone's doing well. I will be doing the quarterly crime update, and then Deputy Chief Stepp will be covering the civilian traffic crash investigation program. So we'll get started. Next slide, please. So with the crime update, overall crime is down year to date. Again, that year to date is January to the end of that quarter, which is June 30th. So violent crime has increased slightly, bringing us a little higher than last year, but still well below our numbers in 2022. And then property crime is down significantly throughout the city, with the greatest improvements in downtown Asheville and also in East Asheville. Next slide, please. So looking at our year-to-date citywide violent crime, and again, year-to-date being from January 1st to June 30th, looking at the numbers, you can see we had that big spike in violent crime. It was a historic spike in 2022 at 397 counts. But looking at 2024 compared to 2023, we're up slightly from 319 to 331. And this is despite the impressive efforts of our patrol officers who have increased crime prevention efforts. Now, crime prevention is vehicle patrols showing more presence, foot patrols, and also bicycle patrols in areas that the data is showing that we have increases in violent crime. And so this has improved over 300 more hours year to date. Next slide, please. So looking at second quarter citywide violent crime, again, this is just for the time span of April 1st to June 30th. In the second quarter, compared to last year, downtown reported 1 fewer violent crime incidents. That's down 3%. North and East reported 13 more incidents, which is up 28%. West reported 5 more incidents, which is 12% increase. And then South reported 11 more incidents, which is a 48% increase. So overall, looking compared to last quarter, there were 28 more violent crimes in the second quarter of 2024 compared to 2023. Next slide, please. So looking at property crime. Year-to-date property crime, it has trended down for the last couple of years. We had a slight increase in 2022 compared to 2021. But you can see, especially over last year and this year, we're still trending down. Citywide property crime continues to decline, with the greatest improvements being in downtown Asheville and then also in East Asheville. Next slide, please. So looking at the quarter from April 1st to June 30th, downtown reported 89 fewer property crimes. So that's almost a 50% drop in property crimes in downtown Asheville. Northeast reported 52 fewer, a 12% decrease in property crimes. West reported 25 fewer, which is 10%. And then South reported 41 fewer, 20%. So overall, there were 207 fewer property crimes in the second quarter of 2024 compared to 2023. Next slide, please. So key takeaways, again, overall, crime is down year to date. Violent crime has increased slightly, bringing us higher than last year, but still well below 2022. And then property crime is down significantly throughout the city, with the greatest improvements in downtown and also East Asheville. Next slide. So any questions about the crime update?
Thank you very much, Chief Lamb. I guess my takeaway for all the information, and so basically, if you go back to the slide where you talked about the crime that was down, as you talked the fewer crimes, I think if you go back to the slide where we talked about fewer crimes in downtown Asheville and the East and West. Okay, okay, yes. So basically, I think what we're looking at is, because we have increased the presence of police basically downtown, then basically the violent crimes are, dropping tremendously. So basically, if we actually had a more police and be able to be fully staffed, where basically we could deploy more police in areas where there are crimes. So basically, I think with that correlation, would you say that could probably drop crime in that area just as efficiently as it's done in the downtown area, just by the presence, not by actually, Anyway.
Yeah. No. And I understand completely what you're asking. Yes, it's so presence does have an impact on crime. I think we've seen that for the last 3 years. Whenever we had our mass resignations, we had that historic spike in 2022 with also an increase in 2021. And we're trending down now because, we had the joint initiative with the sheriff's office downtown up until June 30th. But we put a plan together along with the help of the city manager to increase our presence downtown on Friday and Saturday night. And thus far, for the last month, we've had 100% staffing of our extra duty on Friday and Saturday night. So that's more officers, more APD officers that are doing foot patrol, bicycle patrol, showing more presence when the business owners wanted to, and residents and tourists wanted to see more presence from the Asheville Police Department in the downtown area. But we also, in addition to offering more presence, we also go after the folks that are committing repeated crimes, because we know based on the data and experience that there's a small percentage of folks that commit the vast majority of crime, like violent crime. So like for an example of that is our gun crime initiative. Is we're going after folks that we're hearing from the community that are shooters, and then that the data is also showing that these folks are committing gun crimes. And we work with the community, we work with federal, state, and local partners to help go after those folks that are doing these shootings. And we're also working with our violence reduction and peace workers that are working in the community to try to get community to hold community accountable. And so we appreciate the partnership with folks like Spark and Keenan Lake, and my daddy taught me that program. Any other questions?
Appreciate seeing this data. I feel like us being able to look at this quarterly just really helps track it and stay abreast of the information. So I know it takes time for many people on your team to pull this and that you're all very data driven. So really grateful that we can see this quarterly and share it out with the community so everyone can kind of keep our finger on the same pulse. Appreciate it.
Yeah, anytime. And just, I don't want to speak too early, but right now our recruitment efforts are looking very strong. We have a lot more people that are in the queue to be hired. Now, they still have to go through the rest of the process, but we switched companies over to Safeguard, and I am very hopeful that we will have a lot more candidates and cadets in this upcoming BLET class. So just really appreciate your support for the police department and the support of our recruitment efforts to make it more desirable to be an officer with the financial support that you've given as well. So thank you so much. And I'll pass it over to Deputy Chief Stepp to talk about civilian crash investigators.
Thank you, Chief, and good afternoon, everyone. So this topic came up under this committee a few months ago, and we asked for some time to allow us to do a little bit of research, speak to some agencies that have implemented or that are implementing the program. So this is just some information sharing back to you as to what we've done up to this point. Next slide, please. So we respond to approximately 8,400 collisions per year, with the majority occurring Monday through Friday, particularly 3 to 5. 86% of those collisions resulted in property damage and did not involve any injury. And that's an important number because as we talk about the civilian traffic crash program, that's the type of accidents that they would respond to. We have met with Charlotte-Mecklenburg and Greensboro Police Department, and both agencies have indicated that they see a benefit in the program. We will prepare a detailed proposal outlining the program's objectives, activities, budgetary needs, and expected outcomes as we move forward. And then we'll bring this information back to this committee for review. Next slide, please. So just to give you some context regarding our collision data, from 2019 to 2023, we completed almost 35,000 collision reports. That averages out to nearly 7,000 per year. 67% occur between 9 and 6 p.m. during the day. 86% of those collisions, as stated earlier, resulted in property damage and did not involve injury. Now, there are an additional 7,100 reported collisions during that same time period that did not result in a report. That's over an additional 1,400 collision calls for service per year. And you may be thinking, well, why didn't it result in a report? That could be a multitude of reasons, like maybe the collision was called in for an APD response, but it was actually out of jurisdiction. By the time we get there, the parties have agreed to settle it amongst themselves, et cetera. So then we would not complete a report. And 84% of those were property damage related. The collision frequency matches local commuter patterns, with the most collisions taking place between Monday through Friday during rush hour. The most active day of the week is Friday, and the most active time period is your 3 p.m. to 5 p.m. time frame. Next slide, please. Locations for collisions. The most active daytime locations involving property damage are Exit 44, Patton Avenue, from New Leicester Highway to the Bowen Bridge, downtown, Lower Merriman Avenue, Tunnel, South Tunnel, Hendersonville Road into the Biltmore Village area, and then Hendersonville Road from the Blue Ridge Parkway to Long Shoals. Out of the collisions, only 891 collisions, 2%, resulted in arrest or citation. Again, that's another important number as we explore the civilian traffic crash, because that is something they would not be able to do and have to call law enforcement to assist with. Next slide, please. So Charlotte Mecklenburg and Greensboro PD, just to give you an example of what their programs look like. Charlotte is still in the process of hiring, but they've allotted 16 positions. Greensboro has 5 and is already going back to their council to request an additional 5. One sergeant oversees each of those programs. Their schedules are pretty similar. One has an evening schedule, but they're both during the daytime as well. Salary ranges vary, 46,000 to 52 for Charlotte, and then Greensboro is a little more wider, 37 to 67. Equipment, both agencies issue F-150 trucks. Some choose to do half hybrid and half regular. Both agencies require the investigators to wear a body-worn camera. And then training, each agency does it a little bit different in terms of the length and what they require. But we particularly would lean toward this, which is a 3-week academy. The state curriculum is something you have to do. It's a 40-hour state curriculum course. We would do in-house department training for crisis intervention, de-escalation, CPR, interviewing, driving, etc. So it'd be a minimum of a 3-week, and that's what those agencies recommended as well. Next slide, please. Primary functions of these civilian traffic crash investigators are to respond to crash events within the city that do not involve a hit and run, a DWI, injuries, or occurred on the interstate system. And that's something new that we learned from those agencies. They do allow the investigators to assist with traffic control, as well as use them to assist with special events, parades, some road races, secondary employment, etc. Next slide, please. So our next step, based on our initial assessment of this program, is that we would recommend that we add this to our list of programs and services. And over the next several months, we would undertake the following: prepare a detailed proposal outlining the program's objectives, activities, budgetary needs, and expected outcomes. Engage stakeholders such as other city departments, budget, fleet, etc., or human resources to discuss the proposal and gather feedback and support. We'll work on detailed implementation plans, including posting requirements, scheduling, logistics, resource allocation, and communication strategies. And then we'll bring the proposal back to this committee for review. Slide, please. If approved to move forward, including funding with the implementation, the timeline would include approximately a 2 to 3 month time frame to develop the application requirements and acquisition of fleet, 2 to 3 months for the application process and candidate selection, minimum of a month of training, and then budget request and approval through our regular budget process. And through that, we would hope that the program would be implemented summer 2025. Next slide, please. Again, just going back to our key takeaways, APD responds to approximately 8,400 collision reports per year, with the majority occurring Monday through Friday, particularly 3 p.m. to 5 p.m. 86% of collisions resulted in property damage and did not involve injury. We've met with Charlotte Mecklenburg and Greensboro, who both found benefit in the program there. And we will we will prepare a detailed proposal outlining the program's objectives, activities, budgetary needs, and expected outcomes, and present that back to you at this committee for review. Next slide, please. Any questions?
Vice Mayor, would you like to go first?
Nope, I have no questions.
Well, I'm sorry, I don't need.
Yeah, I'm just real appreciative to what Deputy Chief Stepp just presented, and basically I think it'll definitely help. So thank you.
Similar gratitudes. It really feels like these are the type of conversations that help us imagine and reimagine public safety. I really think that, as one of our colleagues likes to say, sending the right tool to respond to the specific thing. And I think that just I'm relieved to see the data really does indicate that there is 86% of these big number of collisions, 8,400, only have property damage, because I have wondered, is it safe if we had civilian investigators involved? And this looks like there's a pretty significant portion of these collisions where we wouldn't have significant safety threats. So that's something I continue to look forward to hearing as Charlotte and Greensboro rolls out. Will these continue to be a safe place to have a different style of response? A question around preparing the program. Is super excited to see that y'all are in development mode for us to look at and consider. I think that these are the type of proposals that many of us are excited to see. I know when we rolled out the community responder program with the fire department, this feels like another version of looking at getting the right tool. A question is, am I anticipating the right thing, right? Like if we're looking at a new job classification, it's with different training, that's going to be new headcount. And so really we should be anticipating a program proposal that is looking at new expenses for us to juggle in the context of everything else. I know, Deborah, you're nodding and you are a very skillful leader for budget management. And we all know that we don't necessarily have new budget lying around in places that y'all will seek efficiencies and seek overlap. But I'd be anticipating that to pay for a new service, we're going to need to find resources to pay for a new service. So I just want to make sure that there's not some rabbit up your sleeve to be like, and it'll be free with existing money, but that we're going to have to figure out how to plan for new resources for a new important service.
If I could, yes, ma'am, we do not have any resources squirreled away in APD's budget right now that they could reallocate. We were fortunate enough, say with the community responder program, that when Jackie and I talked about this initiative, they were able to use existing resources, but because we are going outside of, APD resources and staffing, then those resources just do not exist and are not easily transferable to a new program. So this is totally new. We've got to figure out generally how many new employees would be needed. We have to figure out again, we have to pay for training as well. I mean, there's a number of things that we need to do. But we think that this is very doable. We will have all of the information. We will have the budget requests in line for us to implement by next year. But Sandra, what was that slogan that you liked so much within we want to do this right, go slow to move fast. We want to be very intentional and impactful in terms of the work, because we think this is a very innovative idea, but we've got to get it right. Because as you said, Ms. Ullman, we are talking about civilians out on our roadways, responding to sometimes can be somewhat volatile situations depending upon who's involved with the accident.
But what I'm hearing here is basically when these civilians are actually called out to these particular sites, they've already vetted, whoever called them out has already vetted the situation. Does that make sense?
Deputy Chief, could you respond?
Can you say that again? I just turned the volume up.
Okay, basically what happens when these the civilian are called out, they basically are being vetted already by the call service that calls them, that sends them to that area, which means that they will actually already know what type of a collision it is. So so they basically could prevent a lot of. I don't think you'd have a lot of conflict with situations, sending them in danger in places of danger.
That's correct, and that's part of the plan that we would put together. If it's some type of civil disturbance at the accident, that's not somewhere that we would want them to respond to. Injury, interstate, there's a lot of factors for us to consider and make sure we get right.
Okay, thank you.
So what this will probably look like, right, is it's not like these civilian investigators will be driving around to pull people over. That's not the function at all. It's someone already had a fender bender. They've politely pulled over. Both drivers have kind of gotten their insurance out, started talking, yeah, we should make a report, and then give a call. And at that point, as you're saying, Sandra, dispatch would make the judgment call based on some protocol. Just seems like a really solid strategy to address what will likely be an industry-long hiring challenge. And as we look like policing looks like in the future, really having diverse response, it seems like a really, really strong approach for us. I'm eager to see what it will take to do this well financially and have that conversation in the context we know as we looked at our sales tax flattening this last year. And as we were looking at increasing pay for our awesome employees, we ran into a need to increase taxes a little bit. And so I don't know what next year will hold, but we'll have to be looking and weighing all of this. So I'm very excited to see this, and the numbers will really help us get real on what a first step could look like and what the resource is. But it's hard to imagine that efficiency of it, allowing those with the deep training in policing to be focused on the things that deeply need that skill. Like I just see this as a really win-win, and excited to see level step we can take next year.
Yeah, thank you. We're excited too. I mean, you talk about the number of collisions. We spend an average of 45 minutes per collision. That's 45 minutes that, officers may be tied up to not be able to respond to a 911 call. And that's over 4,000 hours per year. So we just have to continue to be innovative and really think about reimagining public safety with our staffing crisis.
One other question, I think you may have touched on it, but they will not be armed, right?
Correct.
That's what I thought. Okay.
I have another question too. I know, Deputy Chief, as you've been really leading the organization to look into this work and talking with other agencies, has anything surprised you in your research or what you've been looking at? I'm always curious of what I'm hearing you present today is like, great, that's what I was hoping I'd hear, because there's a hope for this program to pan out, but you need to do the due diligence and the homework and the research. But as you've been exploring, is there anything that surprised you a little bit, or just anything that's kind of popped out of like, wow, we're going to need to really think hard on this part?
I think not allowing them on the interstate was probably something that I don't know that I would have thought about. So that was a surprise. But for the most part, from what I've heard from both agencies, is exactly what everybody here has said: is do it right, go slow, get it right. And I think for the police department, we could also view this as an opportunity. These agencies do not have education requirements or age requirement. Their age requirement is 18 years old. But, we could see this as a potential get your foot in the door to the police department until you're 20 to start the academy. So we're just super excited from many factors on how this can benefit the police department and the city.
I hadn't thought about that, because there is a real gap from when students are figuring out what's their next step from high school before law enforcement's really an option. And so this can be a really powerful workforce development programming too, as well as being efficient with our resources. It's just, I keep waiting for the bad news to come out of this, and I'm okay with that if we need to do the homework and we learn something but I just keep not hearing it. It just seems like I'm very thrilled to hear that we're moving beyond looking at other communities into program development. Excited.
And
All right.
Updates will be on your work program that we'll be discussing next month.
Fantastic. Sounds great. And Deborah, this might be something worth just maybe it's a matter of Sandra and I when we're talking with the other councilwomen to share, but I bet other councilwomen would be really excited to hear this progress. So make sure we can kind of share that widely, because I think everyone's really interested in this opportunity.
We sure will.
Great.
We'll update council.
That moves us to our 6th item on the agenda, which is our committee closing public comment. Is there any public comment ready to share now?
One moment, let me reload.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, no, we do not.
Okay. With that, we will move to adjournment. Thanks, everybody. See several of you later today at our council meeting. Good job, everybody. Take care.